Good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to the guest speaker session for Virasat Craft Conclave, a day dedicated to celebrating the richness of Indian art forms and handicrafts. We are extremely honored to host Ms. Dia Mirza for this speaker session. Ma'am is an actor, producer, United Nations Secretary General's Advocate for Sustainable Development Goals, UNEP Goodwill Ambassador, and Ambassador for Wildlife Trust of India. Ma'am is also the Artist Ambassador for Save the Children, Board Member of Sanctuary Nation Foundation, and Global Ambassador for International Fund for Animal Welfare. We are extremely delighted to hear from you today, ma'am. It is such a matter of pride for all of us to host you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Isha, and thank you for that warm introduction. Firstly, I want to start off by saying I'm so glad that this conclave is being conducted, that you are celebrating the lives and the legacy that we've inherited in the form of this rich handicraft industry that we have in our country. I think the artisans of our country not only reflect our rich history of culture and religion and so many things that we would not learn to care about or appreciate had it not been for the lasting and incredible impact that they have on our lives with these traditions that they've imbibed over centuries. And we are very fortunate, I think, as a nation to have this legacy, to have this inheritance of artisans and handicraftsmen from all over the country. And I take great pride in celebrating and honoring their work. And I do so in the choices that I make with the things that I buy and I wear. And I think it's so important for the young people, especially the youth of our country, to keep this legacy alive. And I'm sure we'll talk more about why it's so necessary. So I'm happy to start whenever you are.
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, we resonate with everything you've just said. So it's just, we feel pleasure to host you today. So to begin with, sustainable development is a way of organizing society so that it can exist in the long term. Ma'am, your sustainable and eco-friendly wedding has been such an inspiration for all of us. It is very crucial that we as a society start taking small steps towards ensuring that we move towards a sustainable lifestyle now. So we would love to know your thoughts about this and how can we as individuals and society take such small steps and initiate conversations around this topic.
I think when you become an advocate for the sustainable development goals, they kind of find a way into every choice that you start making in life, because these goals are not abstract goals that are meant only for companies or organizations or governments or industries to adopt, but I think are the kind of goals that we can adopt even at an individual level. These are what we identify as the North Star, the guiding light for us to achieve equality in all spheres of life, and to obviously give opportunity and well-being for everyone. And I think uh, when we were planning our wedding, the first thought that of course comes to mind is how can one ensure that while we celebrate with the culture that we want to celebrate with, because honestly the most sustainable way to get married would be to register and be done with it. There's nothing more to, like, there is nothing then. No, it doesn't involve anything, right? It's a simple court registry. You sign the document, you exchange garlands, maybe a little bit of mithai, and you're done. You're married, right? But we wanted to keep the cultural context alive. I really love our powerful shlokas and chants, and so there were a few things that we managed to ensure we did, which I think made our wedding what has come to be called a sustainable wedding. So the first thing that we did was we chose to have a female priest. And I know that when people talk about or think about sustainability, they don't really think about gender. And I think gender is a very important and a very integral part of achieving sustainability. And here was this remarkable lady who I had witnessed performing the wedding rites of another friend. And I was blown away by the sanctity, the peace, and the love and the beauty that she brought to the ceremony. She beautifully conducted it, and she had also kind of, translated every Vedic shloka for everyone to listen to and understand. And I remember thinking, my God, this has to be the first wedding that I have attended where I was watching the entire ceremony with rapt attention. I couldn't look away. And that is the power of love that she commanded of all of us. And we wanted that. We wanted to make that ceremony one that was not rushed through, one that, how I know of families that kind of bribe the priest and say, jaldi, jaldi karwa dena, I don't want to go through, because people perceive it, people do it, but they don't want to really enjoy the essence. And here we had this amazing lady who took us through the entire ceremony where everyone enjoyed the essence. So that was the first choice that we made, which I feel very proud of. The second thing, of course, was ensuring that we kept it simple in every way possible. Of course, simplicity is relative. Simple for me may not be simple for somebody else. It may appear to be extravagant, but honestly, what we did try to do is to ensure there was no waste. And we try to ensure we used materials right through in every form, whether it was the decor or the catering service or even the sanitation stations. Every single component was natural, earth friendly, and organic. And uh, plastic bottles have become such a big part of events and especially weddings. So we refused plastic bottles. We ensured that our guests were served in glass bottles and in glasses that were obviously washed and reused. And there was no food waste because we had a very tight set of a very small guest list. It was a very intimate wedding which happened in the garden in my home, a place where I spend every morning of my life when I'm here. And we had less than 60 people attend, and we knew exactly what everybody's food preferences and what roughly everybody would eat. So we ensured there was no food waste. I think that's a very big part of having a sustainable wedding. And also uh, the garments that we choose to wear. Typically, I think, I don't know, I guess Hindi films are to blame, but people tend to kind of choose extravagance and then you never reuse those garments. They just get, folded and put away in a closet and maybe removed every few months to be aired. Um, so I wanted to wear a traditional handcrafted Banarasi sari that I would be able to hand on to the next generations. I've inherited my nani's saris, which are like 250 years old, her nani's saris. So this is like a rich legacy that I've inherited, and I would want for our children to inherit the same. So these were a few of the choices that we made, and we had a great time. There was no plastic. There was no plastic used in the decor. Nothing. Yeah.
This was so thoughtful, ma'am. This is just so inspiring and this sounds so lovely and wonderful. Thank you so much for answering this, ma'am. Continuing, as the United Nations Environment Goodwill Ambassador and United Nations Secretary General's Advocate for Sustainable Development Goals, you are the voice of the sustainability landscape of the country, and you have been vocal about conservation of nature. So, how has your journey been, and what do you think about the future of our country with aspect to this?
So, Isha, I want to start off by saying that it was when I think perspective is so important, right? And I'd like to lend that perspective to you guys, because I think when I got that perspective, it really shook me up and it propelled me in a direction of action. Of course, personal action, and then of course public advocacy. But I realized that India, the geographical land map, like the geographical land space of India, occupies less than 2.3% of the global land space, right? And we have the second largest population on the planet living on this land, a very small piece of land. And until about 100 years ago, we had uninterrupted forest cover through this country. Obviously, our population was not as dense as it is today. Now, when we talk about population density, I think instantly one must recognize the fact that when we are so many people, it means we need access to natural resources in that quantity. Not only for ourselves, but for everything that we produce, manufacture, and export. So we're not just catering to the needs, the lifestyles, and sustenance of the people of our land. We're also contributing to the sustenance of people in different parts of the world. Now, what forests do, as we all know, is that they act as catchment areas for rain. They restore the carbon in the soil and are what we call, in simple terms, the birthing ground of rivers. So forests are directly connected with our water resources, and of course, they manage the climate. Now, like I was saying, 100 years ago, India had never ending, unending forest cover, uninterrupted forest cover that has over the last 100 years become very fragmented and has been reduced to only, hold your breath, 25% of the geographical landmass of our country, of which less than 5% is dense forest. Now, all of us, you and me, and everybody we know, and the entire population of this country depends on that 5% to give us everything we need. This shook me up because it makes you realize that in order to achieve anything in the next 20, 30 years, any of the goals, whether you look at zero hunger, you look at gender equality, you look at education, any of the goals, right? Any of the 17 goals, they will not be achievable if climate and nature don't become the center of our focus. So one of the unfortunate realities of our times is that nature is not a vote bank subject. Climate is not what buys or gets people their votes, because it's just not become the center of focus for anyone yet. Which is why the politics of our country doesn't even include climate in their agenda. Some political parties have just started doing it. But imagine, we've rapidly lost so much forest cover. We continue to. Our forests are fragmented. There is what is described as man-animal conflict, because while we have so little forest cover left in our country that is so fragmented, we, despite that, have the world's largest population of wild tigers, Asiatic elephants, and lions. Now, when I talk about lions, you may recognize the fact that whenever we see, now we've started seeing so many videos, right, that are floating around the internet, where you're seeing lions on highways, you're seeing lions going into hotels, because the population is increasing, but their area that they occupy and they live in is so small that they are going out. And the truth is that we share our land with these species, all of them, and we have disconnected their forests, we've disrupted their pathways. So it is our responsibility to ensure that we give them rite of passage. You can't tell an elephant that has centuries of DNA memory of a migratory route that, no, buddy, I've built a highway here, you can't cross this way. Or I've decided to put a wall up here, you can't go by this route, because they don't know any other route. This is the route they know, or they've mapped in their DNA memory that they've inherited for centuries. It can't be changed. So, sustainability can only be achieved if climate and natural and conservation of nature becomes the center of our focus. And um, and we have to very quickly understand that all that we need for our survival, our health, our well-being, our economic growth is connected to the ecological balance that we've lost. And we need to make climate and environmental protection center of focus and a part of even a vote bank or vote agenda, because until that happens, not much will change. People will continue to talk about air pollution only when it's the month of October, November, December. And they will then through the year forget and discard the fact that we have 21 of the most polluted cities in the world in India. Or they will completely ignore and neglect the fact that there is scientific evidence that by the year 2030, most of our cities will have no water in the country. Drought, floods, forest fires, um, the intensity and frequency of all of these natural episodes by climate because of climate change are going to increase, and this affects all of us. I'm not here to paint a doomsday image. I'm here to tell you all that when I discovered all of this and I realized how much is going wrong, it became my personal mission to do something about it, act on this. So what are the things that you and me can do to achieve sustainability? Of course, we can make better choices at an individual level. I'm sure, Isha, you will ask me about that later and I'll be happy to answer. But the first thing is individual change, so personal behavioral change. The second is to get involved with communities and groups of people that are supporting and fighting for climate change and climate action. Third is to demand transparency and more effective policy implementation, because India actually has one of the strongest wildlife and environmental conservation laws, but we don't implement them in many places. So asking and demanding for that. The fourth thing that we can all do is to partner with and support organizations that work for wildlife and environmental protection. And the sustainable development goals, in my view, will not be achievable if goal number 13, which is climate action, is not implemented. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, sure. I am sure the statistics that you put across. Yes, ma'am. I'm sure the statistics that you put across are very alarming, and it's as real as it gets. So it's very important that we start taking steps now. It's high time. So, ma'am, our country has been gradually progressing towards sustainable development. The journey is very long, as you just said, but it's appreciable that how there is this young generation of people who are aware of the need to work towards sustainable development. So, ma'am, we at Project Virasat aim to revive the traditional art forms of the country and also fulfill 7 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals as given by the United Nations. So, ma'am, what is your take on sustainability of the handicrafts industry for India's mission to achieve the SDGs by 2030?
So from what I've understood, Isha, is that the one thing that really jumped out at me was the fact that it's possibly one of the only industries that has equal representation of women as there is men. In fact, I think there are 53% women handicraft artisans in our country, or handicrafts artisans or artisans in our country, and 40 something men. So that's fantastic. That's like one goal achieved already. The question though is, are women paid as much or as equally as the men are? Possibly not. So I think to start with, identifying and understanding that handicrafts and artisans are an integral part of achieving sustainable development goals is amazing, because that is a reality. Many of actually all of our artisans come from rural areas of our country, and I think in many ways, this strength or this power of the arts has what has kept them, has given them a place of pride in their own communities, has sustained their communities over centuries. And while the world moves towards urbanization, we must not disconnect from the strength that these communities bring to us, because sustainability can also only be achieved when grassroots communities are strengthened. So ensuring that education reaches them alongside their skill development. So there are many times I've spent a lot of time with karigars, and I absolutely love how they work. And it's like, especially when I was in Banaras and I was watching the Banarasi sari being hand woven, it's mind blowing the way they work, with the different colored threads and how their hands and their fingers and their feet work, and the mathematics involved. It's mind boggling. There's a science to it. And I'm pretty sure that a graduate from an urban city would not be able to pick up the skill even if they tried, because it's a legacy that they learn from their forefathers right from a very young age. And therein lies it's a conundrum, because children have been stopped from working or learning and are being sent away to school, and there are many arts and art forms that are dying because of this. Now I feel it's up to us to understand that this proficiency of skill is not attainable in an adult age. It has to be taught from a young age. I remember going to school and learning needlework and how to cook, amongst other subjects that I was learning, right? I don't know how many schools do that still, but in my school, when I was growing up in the 80s, we learned all of this. And it was not perceived as labor, as manual labor. So I think it's so important for us to kind of, and I think there is some work happening on this area, where even if young people in a family and in a community are being taught a skill, an inherited family tradition, an art skill, they must be allowed to learn, provided the hours are not inhuman, and the child is getting the opportunity to also go to school and is getting a formal education alongside the skill development that the child is receiving. And in doing so, I think what we will be doing is not just empowering the community with the skill that they have and the inheritance of this legacy, but also giving them the opportunity to stand up for themselves, fight for themselves, and ensure they get the best price for what they're making. There is no middleman involved who is basically, picking up their products for 5 or 10% of the final cost, or the final cost that it's sold at. So where the person, the artisan is enriched by not just the inheritance of his legacy, but also by the proceeds or the funds that one can make through the sales of these crafts. I think one of the biggest failings of modern times has been that we've unfortunately been very exploitative. We've celebrated these craftsmen and their craftsmanship, but we've not really ensured that they've benefited from the proceeds of the sales of their art forms. And I think that can make a big difference. They wouldn't feel the need to migrate to cities, thereby putting pressure on cities. They would remain in their local communities, working, learning, and making the kind of money that they need to, and enjoying the life that they rightfully should.
Ma'am, thank you so much for answering that. We at Virasat deeply resonate with everything that you just said. We do believe in establishing direct market linkages with the customers. So thank you so much for answering that. Adding on to that, what do you think about the role that can be played by the Indian film industry in enlightening the masses about the craft industry and helping the dying craft forms regain their lost glory? How important do you think it is to integrate the craft sector in production of Indian films and web series and shows and other aspects? We'd
So
love to know your thoughts.
Isha, I think craft is already used a lot, right? Um, in many ways, clothes, garments, in production of garments, even art sets when they're built. There are lots of local artisans that build, help in construction of these. Obviously, it all depends on what the narrative and what the story and the setting of the story is. But there's so many stories that I can think of that are rooted in rich Indian cultural traditions that kind of reflect I'm thinking about like whether it was let's say a film like any of the Sanjay Leela Bhansali films, right? You see his set design, and they usually have like a very strong art design in it, and it's always kind of celebrating Indian art forms, cultural and handicraft forms. So from the clothes to the jewelry to the spaces that the characters are occupying. I think the like for example, I've always celebrated Indian textiles, Indian weaves, various forms of embroidery. I support designers that are working with integrity with our handicraftsmen, so ensuring that they are giving them empowering them by employing them, and not, don't have exploitative workspaces. um, like for example, I do a lot of work with Anita Dongre, who has a brand called Grassroots, and she works directly with the karigars in their villages. So everything is made at the village, in their home environments, in the comfort of their, in their natural environments, and is sent to her at the cost that is, honorable and decent. So I hope that many more people in film will continue to build such partnerships, uh, celebrate such work by wearing, by using, by showcasing, by talking about it. And yes, I think the power of the visual medium is very strong. So when we see more and more of our own traditional handicrafts and arts in cinema, I'm sure it will help celebrate our legacy a lot more. Obviously, it can't be forced in if it's not a part of the storytelling or the narrative, but wherever there is an opportunity, I'm pretty certain that most people would do so.
It's just so lovely and wonderful that you interact with artisans at the grassroots level. And we completely agree that the Indian film industry leads a.
Share something wonderful that we did.
Yes, ma'am.
We
We'd love to hear your personal experience.
we actually invited the artisans to Lakme Fashion Week one year, and we got them to walk with us on the ramp. And I was walking with 25, I'm getting goosebumps even now talking about it, but 25 ladies who had worked on that entire line that was showcased at Lakme Fashion Week. They walked out with me in their glorious ghagras. They were all from Rajasthan. Oh my god, it was just spellbinding. The entire audience stood up and clapped for them. And Anita, whose show it was celebrated for doing so. And I think it is these actions that matter. We need to let people who work and live in rural areas know that they are not less than people in urban centers, that they are not behind, that they are not less, they are not different. Yes, they are different, and it's something that we should celebrate and respect.
Ma'am, that was just lovely. I am sure we could imagine the entire scene in our heads. The audience could do so that as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, Adding on to that question, the handicrafts industry has been in a dire state because of lack of support for various Indian traditional craft forms over the years, as we discussed. And this has definitely impacted the artisan community. So, ma'am, how do you think the sustainability and revival of this sector benefits the artisan community and also the society at large at the same time?
I've touched upon this in my previous answers, but I'll just kind of highlight those points once again. When people at the grassroots are strengthened and empowered, then they don't feel compelled to migrate to cities. So the burden and the pressure in urban centers reduces significantly. Secondly, we end up obviously reviving a legacy that we should be proud of. And it also, you know, lends to achieving many of the goals. So Isha, I think you mentioned 7 goals, right? I think I'm going to try and see which ones those are. I think it would be goal 8, decent work and economic growth, because when they receive the right revenue for what they're making, it does empower them and ensures their economic growth. It also takes care of goal 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, because industry is not just urbanization, it is also this people rich and the other one that it would ensure would be obviously gender equality, good health and well-being, no poverty. My God, I think it's more than 7. Zero hunger. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Reduced inequalities. 6. I would also like to believe that that would also lead to peace and justice, which is 7, and 11 as well, sustainable cities and communities. 8.
Yes, ma'am. Agree. Totally agree with you. So, ma'am, it's an absolute pleasure to hear from you today. You are such an inspiration for all of us, and as youths, we definitely look up to you. So, what message would you like to give to this current young generation of the country?
I look up to you guys because seriously, I'm not joking. I mean it with all my heart and with utter sincerity. I think the kind of questions you're asking, the kind of work that you're doing, the kind of impact and just interest that you have in everything that you're taking up is truly inspiring. I'm very sorry that you've inherited such a mess, and there's so much that we need to fix, and unfortunately we are time bound. Our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents didn't have the sense of urgency that we have been straddled with, you have been straddled with. And I just really hope that we can work together and really build strong partnerships and ensure that we can really step up progress and put the kind of pressure that we need to on governments and industry to ensure we become more sustainable in every sphere, because it's a matter of our survival, it's a matter of our health, our progress, our well-being. And we, like I said earlier, we don't have too much time. We have less than a decade to achieve uh, all of our goals. But most importantly, I think it's a good place for me to highlight um, the a new it's not a new, but it's a very urgent and important campaign that has been launched called Generation Restoration, which essentially calls upon communities and especially young people to become generation restoration, where you dedicate and you ensure the implementation of conservation of natural systems and ecology across the country and the world, and um, and ensure that you, even in your own personal narrative, your individual lives, restore nature and bring back nature. So The only thing that I hope, and I think this is also a nice opportunity for me to perhaps highlight some of the individual or human behavioral changes that you can bring to be to then, I mean, just be a part of not just generation restoration, but just, you know, kind of adopt the sustainable goals at an individual level. Start with reducing wasteful consumption. One of the byproducts of urbanization is advertising that is constantly telling you to buy, have. So choose wisely. Don't get what you don't really need. So reduce consumption, reduce waste. Be mindful of what kind of waste you generate. So I've completely stopped buying items of food, especially fruits, that are packaged in plastic. I've started eating local and seasonal. I follow a plant-based diet, mostly a plant-based diet. We segregate waste at home. We compost all our kitchen waste, all our biodegradable waste, and the rest of the waste is segregated into different compartments and sent to the agencies that collect and recycle this waste. And in fact, the municipal corporation has given us a wonderful certification called a zero waste society. So we basically contribute to, we don't generate any waste or basically give any waste to the BMC. Have short baths. So even if it's a shower, sing a song, make your shower last as long as your song. Make sure it's not a song that's longer than 5 minutes. um, I can't talk about using local transport more because unfortunately I can't, but it's something that is deeply encouraged. It makes a big difference. So yeah, I don't go for long drives just for fun. Interact more with nature, support organizations that protect nature and wildlife, become a part of campaigns that address and demand policy change. I think that's a very, very big part of being a part of the change. What else? There are so many things actually that one can do, but these are a few. And I hope that you can adopt some of these practices and be change makers and leaders at home and in your community.
Thank you so much for answering that, ma'am. I am sure the sustainable practices that you talked about are definitely going to be followed by the participants, by the audience, by me. So this has been so inspiring, and this was indeed a very enriching and such an insightful session, ma'am. We thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us today. It was such an honor for all of us to hear you today. It was like a dream come true, such a fangirl moment for me, honestly. Thank you so much. I am sure the participants have had a great time. Thank you so much, ma'am. We look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you for asking me all these questions. Thank you for all of you. I've been reading the comments. You've been such a lively and engaged audience. I'm going to, before I go away, unless you're strapped for time, if anybody has any questions in particular, please ask. Isha, do you mind if I answer a few questions from your other attendees or panelists?
No issues, ma'am.
So if anybody has any questions, please ask. Some of the other things that I forgot to mention is, did I mention refusing single-use plastic? So carrying my own cloth bag in my handbag or carrying my own bottle. So we've created this hashtag called traveling bottle, hashtag traveling bottle, that I think has really worked because I see more and more people carrying their own bottles to the gym, to work, to everywhere, which is great. I don't see any questions in the chat box. So if anybody has questions, please please ask quickly and then I'll answer one or two. Okay, so there is one question. Sumita Pai has asked, Dear Dia, it was wonderful to listen to you. Very happy to hear that you're following a mostly plant-based diet. I do hope you can go fully vegan one day. Sumita, I don't know, I've been vegan. I was vegan for 2 years, and I was asked to, include certain things in my diet that are vegetarian, and but are not entirely vegan for health reasons. So maybe I'll go back to being vegan again. I don't know, but possibly so. Although I think being plant-based is sustainable. It's a great practice. It's already very good. Do you organize anything where students can contribute? Aditya is asking. I'm not sure what you mean, but if you mean contribute physically through participation, then you could kind of right now with the pandemic, I'm not sure, but at any other given point in time, there is many of the organizations that I work with and support that you could give your time and your attention to. Right now, of course, there's a lot of online activities happening and campaigns happening, and if there is any skill set that you can contribute with, they would be very grateful. So there's the Sanctuary Nature Foundation, there's the Wildlife Trust of India, and there is IFAW. Isha, should we take one last question?
Yes, ma'am, sure. We should take one last question.
Ma'am, as you mentioned, single-use plastic, what are your options regarding the hazard of cigarette butt plastic waste? Don't smoke. Don't smoke. It's terrible for your lungs. It's terrible for the environment, and it's a very, very big problem because we found cigarette butts in ocean floors. So start holding cigarette companies accountable for the waste that they are creating. There's something called extended producer's responsibility, and I totally believe that the tobacco industry should be made accountable for the environmental hazards of cigarette butts. Okay, there are lots more questions coming in now, so I'm going to now leave it here, otherwise Isha will say I've usurped the entire evening. Please go ahead and have a wonderful conclave. Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure. And I wish you all the very best. May we succeed in reviving our incredible legacy, and of course, ensuring that our craftsmen and artisans are respected, loved, cherished, and celebrated every day.
Sure, ma'am. Just putting that out, ma'am. We also have a project called Leher, where we try to recycle the plastic butt polymer which cigarette has. So that is also there. It is we have started with the project. So just wanted to put that across as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Are holding the tobacco industry accountable for what they're doing. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah. A lot of people don't know, but the cigarette butt waste is the most polluted item in the earth. We think it's plastic, but the oceans, cigarette butts are the most littered waste. So yeah, it is something that definitely needs to be addressed, and that's why we started with Leher. But yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining in. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you, interact with you. I am sure we all had a great time, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Had a great time. Thank you. Lots of love to all of you. Be well, be healthy.
Thank you so much.
Bye.